Hi, I'm Carol.
And I'm Carolyn.
And I teach high school English.
And I teach high school theater.
And when we're not creating our own dramas, we often go out to see other dramas. So you could say that we kind of get caught up in the drama of the drama.
So before we even start this week with our exciting production.
And I'm very excited to talk about this production.
Me too. I just want to thank Grateful Bites in Flemington, New Jersey. Look at these. So I bet you can guess what show we saw this week. Frankenstein.
Right.
And in addition, our school year has ended.
Yes. And I just want to give a shout out to
teacher gift
from Gina and Sarah. You know, we have great families that we get to work with every day, great kids and great parents. And so they gave us this as a gift. So
yes.
Cheers.
Cheers. End of the school year.
And thank you to both of you. These are pretty awesome.
Yes, very awesome.
So let's
and they work. So this week
we saw Frankenstein at the St. Luke's Theater in New York. Like it was like big time
for us.
Okay, big time. And it was
Off-broadway.
Off-broadway, and often because I go up a lot, right? And I have often walked past St. Luke's and have been fascinated by the theater and the church for forever. It's on 46th Street. It's between 46th
right there on
Restaurant Row. And you know, it's still a church. They still have services in there on Sundays. I have been there when the services were letting out.
Right.
And they've had several shows that have been running there. There's one, Sisters, that I still want to get up to see that has been running there almost 5 years, right?
Yes.
So we had the opportunity to go see Frankenstein the Musical there. Right. And you know, so I had a dream come true for me that I got to go in and see a show in this theater, and and we got to eat at Becco's, which is Lydia's restaurant, which is literally right across the street.
And on top of it, to just add this, the whole evening, if you want to go see a great show in New York City, we saw Frankenstein by Eric Sirota.
Yeah.
And have dinner, you can do it for less than $200.
Yeah.
Because that's an opportunity. You don't always have to go to Broadway to see
a great show.
Theater.
And the theater itself was it's an awesome space, right? I mean, it probably had maybe 80 seats, 100 seats.
Yeah.
The stage is right there. And it was really, for me, it was one of the, you know, most enjoyable events that we've gone to.
Yeah,
I mean,
I didn't know what to expect. So as teachers, we have both taught Frankenstein.
Right. And it's not one of my favorite books. I have to say
that. And to go in thinking, oh, Frankenstein, a musical. I wonder where they're going there. You know, we were pleasantly surprised by this production.
Very, very much so.
From the beginning of the show, with the music that was playing, which was all, I believe, all created by Eric. It was really kind of set the mood.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Eric, because one of the dramas that we had at the end of the school year was that we had a young man who wrote a speech for graduation, who said in his speech that once you graduated from high school, all your dreams were over. And luckily, I always have to read the speeches before we allow the students to give them for various reasons. But he was a little upset with me when I told him that he couldn't give this speech because he was going to offend a lot of people, grown-ups in the audience, who would be very upset to know that once they were at 18, all of their dreams were over.
Right.
And you know, you and I were talking after the show. Eric, who is the playwright, he wrote the book and the music for this production of Frankenstein, is the perfect example of why at 18 your dreams are not over.
Right,
you know?
Because he has been working on this production
37 years.
37 years. And he is not a theater person. He is a physicist.
Yeah. He has a PhD in physics, right?
And so he has been able to, through workshopping this, create this fantastic production of Frankenstein.
Yeah, and you know, and you can tell that it's his passion, because we had the opportunity to talk to him after the show. Luckily,
Right.
you know, he was there, and we had the chance to, you know, he was sitting near us, and we had a chance to talk to him afterwards. And when he's talking about it, you can see the animation and the passion that he has, and how he sort of, you know, talked about how he didn't know what he was doing, and he went to workshops, and he's sort of taken it to this level now,
Right.
where it's you know, it was really good. It was really good.
And what's interesting is he wrote it all. He did the book, the music, and the lyrics. He's had his daughter, I think, did some additional music, but all of that, the book, the music, and the lyrics were written by Eric. So that's pretty impressive. And when we were talking to him, because we were talking to him about just the fact that it came across as a love story for me, because the character of Elizabeth, who was played by Kate Kiley, and she was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I understand it was her first night.
That was her. She was the understudy,
and she had taken over the role, and she was
Right.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
That part hadn't been really developed in the novel, and that he took it upon himself to sort of create this character.
Right. And you know, as I said earlier, Frankenstein is not one of my favorite books. Right. It is not, and it's painful to teach to kids, because they come into Frankenstein with the understanding of the Frankenstein, the monster that they've seen in these movies, you know, as kids, and the book isn't that at all. And you know, one of the questions I asked Eric was sort of in the book, you have this character Walton, who's sort of relaying the story
through letters,
and you know, they're up in the tundra looking for Frankenstein, and you know, and all of that was cut out, and I thought it was good. It was cut out. Like, I was glad that was cut out.
And he had created a song called for Elizabeth called "I Write by Candlelight," which he said was to really kind of develop her into, so that her thoughts were coming out in the same, I guess, format that Shelley used through these letters.
I write by candlelight, my dreams of the bed, and deep into the night, pen words dare not recite, but when the time is right, one day will be read. In Victor's books I see the Vitruvian man. He sees the science, I see the beauty of man. I feel my heart beat pound, and I can hear it sound, for I can now expound the beauty of man.
So one of the messages of the show, you know, you said it was about a love story, and for me it was more about this idea of you know, creation and different kinds of creation, and Victor was creating this creature. I called it a monster, and Eric corrected me right away and said he's not a monster. He's not a monster. He's the creature. You know, Victor creates the creature, but Elizabeth is creating this book of her thoughts, and so this sort of difference in creation is coming out. And what I started thinking about, you know, after the show, I love Mary Shelley as a person. I'm fascinated by who she was and her whole life. And you know, if you read a lot of the criticism about Frankenstein, there's this whole discussion about, you know, it's really about childbirth. Her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, died from complications of childbirth, so she was raised by her father, and her father sort of was let her be this wild child and sort of raise herself, and she had this relationship with, you know, Percy Shelley, and they never got married, and he was married to somebody else, and she got pregnant, and you know, then she lost her child. So you know, there's a lot of discussion about Frankenstein really being about childbirth and giving birth and motherhood, and how motherhood destroys women. But the women in the novel are almost voiceless. Right. And it was sort of ironic to me when I thought about it through these conversations we had with Eric, that these women in the book, from this woman who was clearly, you know, feminist before there was that word, right? Who was clearly advocating and living a life that was not typical of women in her time period, would sort of give these not give these women a voice. And here is this man who gave this woman like this very strong, important, powerful voice in the show. Yeah.
So just to talk about the production
Yeah.
in general, so the show runs on Monday nights.
Monday nights.
And what's really fascinating to me is we go into the space, and there's this really lovely set that was designed by Martin Cornelius. And it, they have to take it down at the end of the night.
Yeah.
But what I really liked about the set was that it was simple, but it was versatile. And then they did these kind of silhouettes
Yeah.
that sort of helped to tell parts of the story, through silhouette, especially when the creature, takes lives, when Justine is put on trial.
Right.
And they did it all in silhouette, which I thought the lighting designer, the lighting designer was Martin Cornelius. The set designer was Matthew Imhoff. But the lighting design for this was phenomenal.
So they're sort of telling, because you couldn't have the whole story. So they're sort of giving you these pieces of what had happened.
Right.
And I forget which character was telling us what happened. I think it was Henry, maybe.
Right.
You see it in the back in the silhouette.
Right.
Him suffocating William.
Right.
Justine going to trial.
And
for
even before you kind of actually see the creature, I believe he was silhouetted. First he's on the table,
right?
Then he exits, and then I think we saw him in silhouette, which is really kind of added to the suspense of the play.
And we don't see his face right away.
No, we do not.
Right. Like you don't.
And we had that discussion too, because funny discussion. So I talk about these things with my children, and my youngest son said to me, "Oh, well, what did he look like? Did he have the big screws in his neck and a square head?" And I said, that's not the way he's described in the novel. Mm-hmm. But even so, I thought they made a really strong choice with his makeup and his costume, because they made him more human for me.
Yeah.
And so you were more sympathetic to the creature than I think if he looked the way that he's described in the novel, which is supposed to be incredibly hideous. But you found yourself to be more sympathetic. And I thought, and we're debating his last name, is Eric Sanchez Canahute.
Canahute?
That's what,
all right.
We apologize, Eric. But I thought he was spectacular.
Right, and
as the creature.
And Eric had told us later that he's a trained opera singer.
Yes.
And his voice was just...
Well, they all were. I mean, Kevin Rarer, who's playing Victor, they were all phenomenal.
Right.
Their voices, because the whole show is pretty much, there's not a whole lot of dialogue. Most of the show was sung.
Right. And he has that song at the end. The creature does that Day of Wrath, where he, and that's where you really see him as being human.
And Eric had told us originally he had chosen the title Day of Wrath for the play, but people were like, well, what's it about? Right. He said it's Frankenstein, so that's why he changed it. Yeah. To be
Frankenstein, which is really what it was about. But I thought that there was not a weak link in the cast.
No, and going back to just, because we're jumping around, but going back to just the production, they had these very set. They had Victor's lab, they had Frankenstein's house, Victor Frankenstein's house. They had an outside, which they used the two side wings for, and then the bridal suite.
Right.
And they just brought pieces in and did that to create it with lighting and just props. And I just thought that the use of the space was fantastic.
Was perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they have that. There's the one song in the bridal suite between the innkeeper and the innkeeper's wife. That's sort of the comic relief of the show, which I thought was very, it was entertaining and it was fun.
And Eric talked about that to us. He talked about the idea of what's really going through Elizabeth's mind the night of her wedding night.
Right.
She's not worried about anything. She's thinking about, he said he chose that she's excited about her wedding night.
Right.
And so the idea that she comes, they're all happy that, this young couple's coming in. She's excited about her wedding night. And then we have this creature who's hiding out.
Right.
Who has to kill her.
Because he said he would.
Because he said he would.
Right. And she's the only character who, and she knows, I guess, because you sort of get the understanding that she's read in secret Victor's notebook, so she knows about the creature.
Right.
And so when she sees the creature, she's not surprised. And she's the only one who isn't afraid of him and doesn't, scream.
Right.
And that's when you really see him as being, almost more human than the rest of the people
agree.
in the show, or the rest of the characters, because at that moment he's like, I don't want to kill you, but I have to.
I have to
right?
kill you.
And you see him struggle with this decision that he has to, because he says Victor needs to feel what I felt, and this is the only way that he's going to do that.
Right.
And I thought that the actor Eric, I thought he did a great job of making that character human.
I saw Frankenstein, a play production of Frankenstein, a drama, many, many years ago. And it's so hard to kind of create that, character on stage, especially when you're that close to the audience, and to make it not laughable.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So that's what really impressed me. The moment when he is with Elizabeth, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, this is happening.
Right.
And it wasn't like that nervous laughter at all from the audience.
No.
It was this realization that he took the one thing that Victor loved.
Right. Well, and all along he's been taking pieces.
Right.
Right. And at the end by the end of the show, everything and everybody that was connected to Victor is dead.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And
Yeah,
so
Henry's death happened on stage as well.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you have, there was never a time, for me, there was never a time that I didn't like the creature. That I was
No.
like,
Yeah.
that I thought, in fact, I think sometimes I even liked the creature more than I liked Victor. As the character.
The character, I agree. And I think that the production, which is 2 hours with intermission, it just moved along. The story, I knew the story of Frankenstein because I've read it, but if you don't know the story,
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Because the story that Eric Sirota tells is just as interesting, and it's
the Frankenstein story.
It's the Frankenstein story
without all the boring pieces.
Without all the boring pieces.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah, it's
for
Frankenstein without all of the unnecessary pieces
Right.
that the kids get bogged down in when they're reading.
Right.
And so if it's sort of like he went through the story and picked out the important pieces.
moments for Victor
Yeah.
Frankenstein.
Right.
That's
And for the creature and for Elizabeth too, and even for Victor's dad, right? Like you see this man who recognizes that there's a issue, that his son is like
right
struggling, right?
Right.
If I were, I would say he's not right, that his son's not right, and then the father's struggling with that and sees his son struggling and says to Elizabeth, really, I don't know why you keep putting up with it. But it's like you sort of see all of these people that you don't get to see in the book.
No, and you were talking about the fact that there's parts that the kids just like struggle to get through.
Yeah.
We talked about the idea of he used a lot of Eric uses a lot of biblical references, which Mary Shelley doesn't. She uses Paradise Lost, and when you try to teach kids Paradise Lost, you can't. You can't, and the kids struggle with Paradise Lost. Eric said he struggled with it.
Right.
So, he decided to add back in these biblical references that were actually in Milton's piece and put them directly into...
And use it in a way that people would understand.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I thought that really worked.
Right.
I thought that it was... I really enjoyed the show. Like there's this one line early in the show, and the line is in a world of order, there's nothing to fear, right? And Victor says it, and I forget who he says it to. I think he says it to Henry, and at that moment, you sort of recognize that this world that Victor has created of all this order is an illusion.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Like, you know, the order, that this relationship that he has with Elizabeth is sort of an illusion. His friendship with Henry is an illusion. This creature that he's created, that he sort of abandoned, all of this, there is no order. And so, you know, then Victor has everything to fear. And that's sort of what the monster, the creature, represents, is this idea that there is, you know, the creature comes in and disrupts all of the order in Victor's life. And for me, that was sort of like that aha moment when I was like, this is a better way to approach this in teaching it to kids. Right.
This is a production that I think students would enjoy.
Yeah.
To see this come to life, and then could actually, you know, contrast, you know, what's in the novel to what choices Eric makes.
And it made me realize that if I decided to teach the book again, I wouldn't teach the whole book. I would just go in and pull out these pieces, just like he did, and just have them read the important pieces. There's no reason for them to read all of that other stuff. It's not, you know, I know Mary Shelley's probably gonna,
she's rolling over.
She's gonna
You're
send
making her roll into
she's
grave.
gonna send a curse on me or something. But you know, it's too much. It's just, even I lose interest in it after a while. You know what I mean? So you know, and I do think that your sympathy is with the creature, and the conversation that I had when I said to Eric, when I called it a monster, and he said to me, but the question becomes, who really is the monster?
Right.
And
we've talked about that.
Is Victor the monster, or is the creature the monster, or is, you know, who really is the monster? And that the kids get.
Yes, they do.
That is the piece.
Well, that's the idea of, you know, evil. You know, who is truly evil in this situation.
Right.
I think that comes into question too. I thought this version of it, I think Victor, I found him to be more sympathetic than when I read the novel.
See, I didn't.
Really?
No, I didn't. Like when I read Victor, I'm much more, I liked him much more than I did after this production. Like after this production, you know, his every, you know, all I kept thinking about was how selfish he was, and how selfish his choices were, and how selfish his, you know, his love for Elizabeth was, and how selfish his relationship with his father was, like, and his relationship with Henry. I just kept seeing him as this very selfish man who was trying to make order and couldn't make, and everything he did disrupted that order. And
he has a song at the end. It's called "I Tried to Fly."
Yeah.
And I found him more sympathetic, but that was me. I mean, I think that I found his intention, because we always talk about this in school about, you know, pure evil. I don't think I don't think he's pure evil. And so I found I was sympathetic towards him.
Well, I didn't. I mean,
maybe it was the actor who created that for me, but I did. What a great cast.
There was no one in the cast that was like, that was weak at all.
And they do this on a Monday night, so these actors could be doing something else on the other nights.
Right. Well, and you know, Eric said that the actor who's playing the creature is leaving because he's going off to do some show, I think in Boston or Providence or somewhere. Right. So this is his last.
But the woman, Kylie, who's playing Elizabeth, is in now, and she's worth the drive to go see.
I think, you know, the whole experience of it, you know, you have like, so the restaurants, you have St. Luke's, and St. Luke's is right in the middle of the street. So on one side you have Joe Allen's, across the street you have Broadway Joe's, and I'd like to say that I have not eaten at all of them, but I have. Because when I go to New York, the main purpose is not to see a show. The main purpose is to eat.
Right.
So, you know, and there's Bourbon Street Grill that's up the street. There's a Brazil place. I haven't eaten there. Across, Becco is across. Don't Tell Mamas is right there.
Right
too.
there, yeah.
Like all of these great places. So you go up. You know, Monday the city's not super crowded.
Right.
You can. There's a parking lot that's, you know, right there in the middle of the street that you can park. It's
and see a great off-Broadway show and support off-Broadway theater.
Correct.
Because I think that that's where a lot of the innovative, creative productions are, and you need to go out and see them.
Yeah, and I really, like I said, I've walked by that church. I can't even tell you how many times. And every time I walk by it, I'm like, I need to come here. I need to come here. I was so excited to be able to go see something there. And I'm really looking forward to going back and seeing some of the other shows that they have there.
And this is being produced by John Lant, who is produces quite a few shows there.
Yeah.
So go out and support the theater at St. Luke's, whether you see Frankenstein or, well, we hope you go see Frankenstein, or whatever you decide to see. And if you're there on a Monday night, Eric Sirota will be there, so you might want to say hello.
Saying hello, and and encourage other people to go see it. Like I was like so happy when we
left there. I was so happy.
Yeah.
And that makes us happy.
Yeah. Can I eat my cake now?
Yeah. And eating cake makes us happy.
Yeah.
So until next time. Oh, these look delicious, but I'll bite into them in a second.
I don't want to mess them up.
Okay.
All right.
Break a leg.